Dive into Unyielding Valor, The Last Stand of Krieg by Maxwell Straythorn, a captivating Warhammer 40k story. Hit subscribe and the bell icon for an epic tale of bravery and sacrifice. Chapter 1. Arrival on Valoria. The sky over Valoria was a tapestry of turmoil, clouds roiling under the oppressive shadows of Tyranid bioships. As the Imperial lander descended, its hull groaning under the strain of atmospheric entry, the planet revealed its scars, vast swathes of ravaged land, cities reduced to rubble, and the ever-present echoes of war. Inside the lander, the Krieg Regiment sat in silence. Their gas masks and greatcoats were a uniform of grim resolve. Among them was Guardsman Leopold, his eyes a pair of dark pools in the shadow of his helmet. His thoughts were a fortress, honed by the harsh teachings of Krieg, impenetrable and focused solely on the duty ahead. Through the viewports, the soldiers glimpsed the landscape of Valoria, a planet that had once been a beacon of Imperial research, now a front line in the war against the Tyranid threat. The contrast was stark and sobering, even to the battle-hardened Krieg. In the command deck, Colonel Ehrhardt stood watching the approach. His face, weathered and lined with experience, betrayed no emotion, but his eyes held a steely determination. He had seen many such worlds, lost to the unending hunger of the Tyranids, and each loss was a weight he carried. As the lander touched down, rattling the soldiers in their seats, a separate narrative unfolded within the confines of the research facility. Dr. Ilara Morn, a leading xenobiologist, watched from a reinforced window as the Krieg made their arrival. Her heart was heavy with a mix of relief and foreboding. The Krieg were saviors in the sense that they were reinforcements against the alien tide, but their arrival signified the true desperation of their situation. The facility, a sprawling complex of laboratories and containment units, had been her life's work. Now it was a fortress, its scientific endeavors bent towards understanding and combating the Tyranid menace. Dr. Morn knew that the arrival of the Krieg meant a shift from defensive research to active war. As the Krieg soldiers disembarked, their boots thudding onto the barren soil of Valoria, they were met with a world in its death throes. The air was filled with the sounds of distant artillery, the stench of burning flesh, and the ominous hum of the Tyranid swarm on the horizon. Colonel Ehrhardt wasted no time. "Form up!" he barked, his voice cutting through the chaos. "We have our orders. This facility and the research within is vital to the Imperium. We will defend it to the last." The Krieg soldiers moved with practiced efficiency, setting up a perimeter. Their faces, hidden behind masks, were devoid of fear. They were the Emperor's chosen, and they would hold the line, no matter the cost. In the shadows of the looming war, Guardsman Leopold felt a familiar stir in his chest, the call of duty, the readiness for battle. He was a son of Krieg, bred for war, and he would face the horrors of this world with the same stoic resolve that was his birthright. Above them, the sky darkened as the Tyranid swarm drew closer, a living, writhing mass of destruction. The battle for Valoria had begun, and the Krieg were ready to etch their valor into its history. Chapter 2. The First Clash. The dawn on Valoria broke not with the gentle caress of sunlight, but with the harsh glare of warfare. The Krieg Regiment, now fully deployed, formed an unyielding line against the impending Tyranid threat. Their position was strategic, covering the approaches to the research facility with a network of trenches and gun emplacements. Guardsman Leopold, positioned at a forward outpost, peered through his scope, surveying the desolate battlefield. The land was a patchwork of destruction, a grim canvas upon which the next brutal skirmish would be painted. Colonel Ehrhardt's voice crackled over the vox, a steady presence in the ears of his soldiers. "Stay alert. They are close." His words were a steel thread weaving through the fabric of their resolve. The first sign of the Tyranids was subtle, almost a trick of the eye, a ripple in the landscape, a distortion in the morning light. Then, with a suddenness that shattered any illusion of peace, the swarm surged forward. It was a living tide, a mass of chitin and claws that seemed to devour the ground beneath it. Leopold's finger tensed on the trigger. The discipline of Krieg was a cold fire in his veins, his emotions locked away, his duty clear. Beside him, his comrades readied their weapons, a chorus of grim determination. The air filled with the sound of gunfire, a cacophony that echoed the deepest nightmares of the Imperium. Lasguns blazed, cutting swaths through the oncoming horde. Heavy bolters roared, spewing death with each burst. The Tyranids answered with their own horrific chorus, a symphony of screeches and the clatter of carapaces. Amidst the chaos of battle, a Tyranid warrior, towering and formidable, broke through the front line. Its blades were like death made manifest, its alien eyes burning with a hunger for destruction. Leopold's squad engaged the creature, their bayonets and gunfire a desperate dance against its ferocity. In these moments, the grim reality of the Tyranid threat was laid bare. They were not just an enemy to be repelled. They were an existential horror, a force that sought to consume all in their path. As the battle raged, Dr. Ilara Morn watched from a vantage point within the facility. Her heart raced, not just with fear, but with a scientist's fascination. Each Tyranid they faced was a subject of her research, a living puzzle to be understood and hopefully overcome. But now, seeing them in this raw confrontation, she felt a chilling revelation of their true nature. The clash was brutal and relentless. For every Tyranid that fell, two more seemed to take its place, yet the Krieg stood firm. Their training, their very identity was forged in the fires of such battles. They were not just fighting for survival, they were upholding the tenets of their harsh world, proving their worth in the eyes of the Emperor. As the skirmish drew to a close, with the Tyranid wave momentarily repelled, the cost was evident. The ground was littered with the bodies of the fallen, human and alien alike. Smoke and the smell of charred flesh hung in the air, a grim reminder of the ferocity of their foe. Leopold, his uniform stained with the remnants of the battle, looked out across the field. His expression, hidden behind his mask, was one of resolve. This was but the first clash, the opening notes in the symphony of war that would play out on Valoria. And he, like his fellow Krieg, would face it head-on with the unyielding spirit of his people. Chapter 3. Fortifying the Research Facility. In the aftermath of the initial skirmish, the Krieg Regiment swiftly turned to fortifying the research facility. The structure, a sprawling compound of steel and reinforced concrete, had become an island in a sea of conflict. Its once pristine halls, dedicated to the pursuit of knowledge, now echoed with the sounds of war, the clanking of ammunition crates, the orders barked by sergeants, and the constant vigilance of the soldiers. Colonel Earhart oversaw the fortification efforts with an expert eye. Every corridor, every entry point was turned into a potential stronghold. Sniper nests were established in the upper levels, heavy bolters positioned to cover the main approaches, and mines laid at strategic points. Guardsman Leopold found himself working alongside a small team, reinforcing a barricade at the facility's main entrance. His hands moved with practiced efficiency, the weight of the sandbags and the cold metal of his lasgun an extension of his being. He was aware of the researchers observing them, their expressions a mix of gratitude and apprehension. Among these observers was Dr. Ilara Morn, her gaze lingering on the Krieg soldiers. Their methodical, unemotional approach to war was both fascinating and terrifying. In her mind, she couldn't help but draw parallels between their unwavering duty and the relentless nature of the Tyranids. Both, in their way, were instruments of destruction. As the day progressed, the facility transformed into a bastion, yet within this transformation lay the seeds of tension. Whispers of sabotage began to circulate among the troops. Some of the researchers, it was rumored, were not as loyal to the Imperium as they appeared. This distrust was not lost on Colonel Earhart, who ordered discreet surveillance of the facility's staff. Leopold, during a brief respite, encountered a group of scientists led by Dr. Morn. Their conversation was terse, the divide between soldier and researcher evident. Yet there was a mutual recognition of the importance of their respective roles in this war. Meanwhile, a subplot unfolded in the lower levels of the facility. A Krieg soldier stumbled upon a clandestine meeting among a few researchers. Their hushed tones spoke of a different agenda, one that aligned more with curiosity than loyalty. The soldier, his sense of duty overriding his curiosity, reported the incident to his superiors. As night fell, the facility stood ready, a fortress amidst the darkness of an embattled world. The soldiers of Krieg, ever vigilant, patrolled the corridors and manned their posts, their thoughts a mix of anticipation and wariness. In his makeshift bunk, Leopold reflected on the day. The fortification of the facility was more than a strategic necessity. It was a symbol of the Krieg's indomitable spirit. Yet, the undercurrents of intrigue and the looming threat of the Tyranids weighed heavily on his mind. The war on Valoria was not just a battle against an external foe, it was a conflict that tested the very principles they fought for. In the silence of the night, the facility stood as a beacon of the Imperium's resilience, a testament to the unyielding will of the Krieg. But beneath that facade, uncertainty and treachery brewed, threatening to undermine their efforts from within. Chapter 4. Memories of Krieg. The night at the fortified research facility was a tapestry of shadow and muted sounds. Within this quietude, Guardsman Leopold found himself wrestling with memories, the past emerging like phantoms from the depths of his mind. In the stillness of his watchpost, Leopold's thoughts drifted back to the toxic wastelands of Krieg. He remembered the endless drills in the ashen fields, where the sky was always grey and the air tasted of chemicals. There, amid the desolation, he and his fellow recruits had been forged into soldiers of the Imperium. Flashback to Krieg. The scenes played in his mind with vivid clarity, the grueling marches through toxic mires, the ruthless combat training in the ruins of a once great civilization, and the relentless indoctrination under the cold gaze of their instructors. He recalled the day he had been given his gas mask, a symbol of his transition from recruit to soldier, a barrier between himself and the poisonous world he called home. In those days, camaraderie was their only respite. Leopold remembered the bonds formed in the barracks, the shared hardships, and the unspoken understanding that each day could be their last. They had been united not just by their duty, but by a collective resolve to endure, to become the unyielding instruments of war that Krieg demanded. The Krieg Creed. The creed of Krieg was more than words, it was a way of life. Sacrifice is the greatest honor, they were taught. To die for the Emperor was to achieve the highest glory. Leopold had embraced this creed, letting it seep into his very bones. Yet, in the quiet of the night, doubts whispered in the corners of his mind. Was there more to life than this endless cycle of war and death? Return to the present. Shaking off the reverie, Leopold refocused on the present. He gazed out at the darkened landscape of Valoria, a world so different from Krieg, yet bound by the same narrative of conflict. Here, amid a different kind of desolation, he found his purpose reaffirmed. He was a soldier of Krieg, a guardian against the chaos that threatened the Imperium. In the facility, Dr. Ilara Morn worked tirelessly, her research a race against time. She had heard rumors of the Krieg soldiers' past, their unfathomable resilience born from a world of perpetual suffering. In a way, she felt a kinship with them. Her pursuit of knowledge was also a battle, a fight against the encroaching darkness of ignorance and fear. As dawn approached, bringing with it the promise of renewed conflict, Leopold prepared to face the day. The memories of Krieg lingered, a ghostly echo, but his resolve was unshaken. With each new battle, he would prove the strength of his creed, the depth of his loyalty to the Emperor. And like the barren plains of his homeworld, he would endure no matter what horrors the war brought. Chapter 5. The Siege Intensifies. With the dawn casting a pale light over Valoria, the Tyranid swarm launched a renewed assault on the research facility. This time, the attack came with terrifying coordination, as if the hive mind had learned and adapted from the previous skirmish. The air thrummed with the sound of thousands of chitinous bodies moving as one, a relentless tide of alien ferocity. Guardsman Leopold, manning his heavy bolter at a critical juncture, felt the weight of the moment. His eyes, behind the visor of his gas mask, were focused and unblinking. Beside him, his fellow Krieg soldiers stood resolute, their weapons a line of defiance against the approaching horror. The Tyranids surged forward in waves, a grotesque mass of limbs and jaws. Their variety was a nightmare of evolution, gaunt, spindly creatures that leaped over obstacles with horrifying agility, lumbering beasts whose armored carapaces shrugged off gunfire, and winged monstrosities that descended from the smoke-filled sky. Colonel Earhart's voice was a steady presence in their ears. "Hold the line! Make every shot count!" The discipline of the Krieg soldiers was a bulwark against fear. They responded with a storm of firepower, their laser guns and heavy weapons tearing into the oncoming horde. In the midst of the chaos, a subplot of intrigue and suspicion played out within the facility's walls. A group of Krieg soldiers, acting on the previous night's discovery, quietly detained a small faction of researchers found tampering with communication equipment. The act of betrayal, while disturbing, was handled with swift and silent efficiency, away from the front line's tumult. Leopold, in the heart of the battle, fought with a grim determination. He remembered the drills on Krieg, the endless preparations for war, but nothing compared to the reality of facing the Tyranid swarm. Each trigger pull was a dance with death, each explosion a chorus in the symphony of destruction. As the battle raged, Dr. Ilara Morn and her colleagues watched from a secured lab, their eyes glued to the monitors displaying the conflict. The raw brutality of the fight was a far cry from the clinical data and specimens they were used to. Among them, whispered conversations spoke of fear and awe for the Krieg Regiment, their unyielding nature both terrifying and admirable. The siege intensified as the day wore on. The facility shook under the impact of larger Tyranid beasts, their massive forms breaching the outer defences. The Krieg met them with bayonets and close-quarters combat, a testament to their training and tenacity. In these desperate moments, Leopold found himself face to face with a Tyranid warrior, its bladed limbs a whirlwind of death. With a roar muffled by his mask, he engaged the creature, his bayonet finding weak spots in its armour, a dance of survival against the embodiment of alien horror. As night fell, the Tyranid assault showed no signs of abating, but the Krieg's line held. Exhausted but unbroken, the soldiers reloaded their weapons, patched their wounds, and prepared for the next wave. In the darkness, the facility stood as a beacon of resistance, a testament to the courage and resilience of the Emperor's soldiers. The day's battle was over, but the war for Valoria continued. For Leopold and his comrades, each moment was a reaffirmation of their creed, a testament to their unwavering duty. And in the darkness, the shadows of Krieg lingered, a reminder of the harsh world that had forged them. Chapter 6. Betrayal Revealed. In the lull following the day's brutal combat, an undercurrent of tension swept through the research facility. The Krieg soldiers, while unwavering in their defense against the Tyranids, now faced a different kind of threat, one from within their sanctuary. Colonel Earhart, having been informed of the clandestine activities of a faction of researchers, convened a covert meeting with his senior officers. The air in the room was thick with the gravity of the situation. "Betrayal in our midst is a cancer," he stated icily. "It must be excised without mercy." Guardsman Leopold, along with a select squad, was tasked with apprehending the suspected traitors. Moving through the dimly lit corridors, the soldiers were a silent force, their presence more ghostly than threatening. They reached the lower levels where the accused researchers had been conducting unauthorized communications with unknown entities. The confrontation was swift but tense. The researchers, led by a man named Dr. Fane, were defiant. "You don't understand. We were trying to find a solution, a way to communicate with the Tyranids, to negotiate—" Dr. Fane's plea was cut short by Colonel Earhart's unwavering resolve. "There is no negotiation with the Tyranids. Your actions are a betrayal of the Imperium and a threat to our mission here." The cold certainty in Earhart's voice left no room for argument. The researchers were detained, their fate a grim reminder of the cost of disloyalty. Leopold, witnessing the unfolding scene, felt a pang of conflict. He understood the necessity of their actions, the importance of unity in the face of an existential threat. Yet the desperation in Dr. Fane's voice haunted him, echoing a sentiment that perhaps there was more to this war than the endless cycle of violence. The betrayal shook the morale of the facility. Dr. Ilara Morn, who had worked closely with some of the detained researchers, found herself grappling with a mix of emotions: anger, confusion, and a deep-seated fear. The revelation that some of her colleagues were willing to risk everything on a dangerous and misguided endeavour was a bitter pill to swallow. As the facility returned to a state of wary normalcy, the event served as a stark reminder of the war's complexities. For the soldiers of Krieg, the incident was another layer in the tapestry of their duty, not just to fight the enemy outside, but to guard against the enemy within. In the quiet hours of the night, Leopold stood watch, his mind a whirlwind of thoughts. The incident with the researchers had sown seeds of doubt, challenging the simplicity of the creed he had always followed. In the darkness, the shadows seemed deeper, the silence more profound. The betrayal revealed was more than just an act of disloyalty. It was a mirror reflecting the myriad facets of war: fear, desperation, and the unending search for hope in a galaxy consumed by conflict. Chapter 7. The Final Stand. As dawn broke over the besieged research facility on Valoria, a palpable sense of finality hung in the air. The Tyranid swarm, vast and relentless, prepared for what seemed to be their decisive assault. Within the walls of the facility, Colonel Earhart and his Krieg regiment readied themselves for the inevitable. The atmosphere was charged with a grim determination. Every soldier knew what was at stake, not just their lives, but the fate of the research facility and the vital data it contained. Colonel Earhart, his expression as inscrutable as ever behind his gas mask, addressed his troops. "This may be our final stand. Our duty is to the Emperor and to the Imperium. We will not falter." Guardsman Leopold, stationed at a crucial defense point, felt a deep resolve settle over him. The memories of Krieg, the betrayals they had uncovered, the relentless battles, all had led to this moment. He and his fellow soldiers were prepared to make the ultimate sacrifice. As the Tyranid horde descended upon the facility, the air was filled with the cacophony of war, the roar of gunfire, the screeches of alien beasts, and the shouts of men. The Krieg regiment, a line of unwavering defiance, met the onslaught with a hail of firepower. The Tyranids were a nightmare made flesh, each creature a terrifying testament to the adaptability and ferocity of the hive mind. They surged over the barricades, engaging the Krieg in brutal close-quarters combat. Leopold fought with a mechanical precision, each movement honed by years of rigorous training. In the midst of the chaos, a group of Tyranid warriors breached the facility's inner defenses, their towering forms cutting through the ranks of the Krieg. Colonel Earhart, in a moment of tactical decisiveness, made a fateful decision. "Set the charges," he ordered through the vox. "We cannot let this facility fall into their hands." The soldiers, understanding the gravity of the order, began the grim task of rigging the facility to explode. It was a last resort, a final act of defiance against the overwhelming Tyranid force. Leopold, his hand steady as he placed the explosives, felt a sense of surreal calm amidst the chaos. This was the essence of being a Krieg, to face death unflinchingly for the greater good of the Imperium. As the countdown began, the soldiers of Krieg made their final stand. They fought not for survival, but to ensure that their sacrifice would not be in vain. The facility, once a bastion of scientific endeavor, became their tomb. The explosion, when it came, was a colossal eruption that tore through the facility and the Tyranid swarm alike. A blinding light enveloped everything, followed by a deafening roar that echoed across the war-torn landscape of Valoria. In the aftermath, the site of the research facility was nothing but a smouldering crater, a testament to the Krieg's unyielding spirit. The Tyranid swarm, caught in the blast, suffered massive losses, a rare moment of reprieve in the endless war against the hive mind. Colonel Earhart and his regiment had made the ultimate sacrifice, but their legacy would endure. They had held the line until the very end, exemplifying the valor and steadfastness of the Krieg. Their final stand would be remembered, a somber yet inspiring tale of duty and sacrifice in the face of insurmountable odds. Chapter 8. Martyrdom. The aftermath of the explosion was a scene of apocalyptic devastation. Where the research facility once stood, now lay a vast crater, its edges smouldering in the light of Valoria's distant sun. The land was scarred, a stark reminder of the ferocity of the final stand of the Krieg regiment. In the hours that followed, the remnants of the Tyranid swarm, disoriented and leaderless, were quickly mopped up by the Imperial forces. The victory was bittersweet, marked by the solemn understanding of the price that had been paid. The news of the Krieg's sacrifice spread rapidly through the ranks of the Imperium's forces. Colonel Earhart and his soldiers were hailed as heroes, martyrs who had given their lives to stop the Tyranid menace. Across the galaxy, their story became a symbol of unwavering dedication and the ultimate sacrifice for the greater good. On Krieg, the news of the regiment's fate was received with a stoic pride. In the training grounds and barracks, the tale of their sacrifice was recounted to new recruits, a stark lesson in the virtues of loyalty and duty. The story of Guardsman Leopold, who had fought valiantly to the end, was told and retold, his name becoming synonymous with the unbreakable spirit of the Death Corps. Back on Valoria, in the shadow of the devastation, a makeshift memorial began to take shape. Soldiers and civilians alike gathered to pay their respects, laying down tokens of remembrance, regimental insignias, handwritten notes, and solemn prayers. It was a place of mourning, but also of reflection on the unyielding resolve in the face of darkness. Dr. Elara Morn, who had survived the blast in a reinforced bunker, stood among the mourners. She gazed at the crater, her eyes filled with a complex mix of emotions. The loss of the facility and her colleagues was a heavy burden, but the sacrifice of the Krieg soldiers was a poignant reminder of the enduring human spirit. Their actions had not only saved the remaining data and research, but had also provided a crucial victory against the Tyranids. In the Imperial archives, the story of the last stand at the research facility on Valoria was recorded with great detail. Historians and strategists analyzed the event, drawing lessons and strategies for future encounters with the Tyranid threat. The sacrifice of the Krieg Regiment was entered into the annals of Imperial history, a testament to their bravery and unwavering commitment to the Emperor's cause. As time passed, the crater on Valoria became a site of pilgrimage, a sacred place where people from all over the Imperium came to pay homage to the heroes who had fallen. The story of their martyrdom resonated across worlds and generations, a beacon of hope and inspiration in a galaxy rife with conflict and despair. The martyrdom of the Krieg Regiment on Valoria was not just the end of a battle, it was a legacy that would endure through the ages. In the grim darkness of the far future, where war was eternal, the memory of their sacrifice shone like a star in the night, a reminder that even in death there was victory. Epilogue. Echoes of Valor. Years had passed since the destruction of the research facility on Valoria, but the echoes of that fateful day resonated throughout the Imperium. The sacrifice of the Krieg Regiment had become a legend, a story told and retold in barracks, academies, and around campfires across countless worlds. On Krieg, the legacy of Colonel Earhart and Guardsman Leopold had been etched into the very culture of the planet. Statues commemorating their sacrifice stood in the training yards, serving as a constant reminder to the recruits of the honor and duty that defined the Death Corps. The tale of their final stand was integrated into the daily recitations, a sacred part of the indoctrination of new soldiers. Across the wider Imperium, the story served as a beacon of inspiration and a stark lesson in the realities of war. In strategic command centers, generals and tacticians studied the battle as a masterclass in defensive warfare and sacrifice. In the hallowed halls of the ecclesiarchy, preachers extolled the virtues of the Krieg soldiers, holding them up as paragons of faith and devotion to the Emperor. On Valoria, the crater left by the explosion had become a memorial site. A monument, simple yet imposing, stood at its center, bearing the names of all the Krieg soldiers who had fallen. It was a pilgrimage site for many, soldiers seeking strength, scholars studying the Tyranids, and citizens honoring the heroes of the Imperium. Dr. Elara Morn, who had continued her work in xenobiology, often visited the memorial. Each visit was a personal pilgrimage, a moment to reflect on the cost of her research and the lives that had been intertwined with it. She had authored several works on the Tyranids, her experiences on Valoria lending a poignant depth to her studies. As the years turned into decades, the story of the Krieg Regiment's sacrifice on Valoria continued to inspire new generations. In the far reaches of the Imperium, where humanity constantly battled against the darkness, the tale was a reminder of the resilience and courage of those who stood in defense of mankind. In the ever-raging wars of the 41st millennium, the legend of the Krieg Regiment on Valoria became a symbol of hope and resolve. Their story, born from the grim crucible of war, transcended the boundaries of time and space, a testament to the enduring spirit of the Imperial Guard. And so, the echoes of their valor continued to resonate, a legacy written in the annals of history and in the hearts of those who carried on the fight. In a galaxy beset by unending conflict, The memory of the Krieg Regiment's final stand shone as a beacon of unwavering loyalty and the ultimate sacrifice for the Emperor and the Imperium.